Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
I'm sure everyone's heard of propaganda, but has anybody heard of Operation Mockingbird? You see, Operation Mockingbird was initiated by the CIA, and the main goal was to manipulate American media to support United States government policies. This operation was notably active during the Cold War. The CIA aimed to implant pro-US propaganda into various media outlets such as news, TV shows, and even the press. During this time, journalists and media professionals were recruited to write favorable stories. Sounds kind of familiar, right? The whole operation was part of a broader strategy of psychological warfare against the United States citizens. Psychological warfare was influence thoughts and behaviors of target audiences, while also maintaining public support for United States foreign policy was key objective. The various tactics that were employed, including hiring students and media personnel, fake companies, and mysterious benefactors, were used to fund pro-US initiatives, and some journalists were even directly compensated by the CIA agents for aligned content. Operation Mockingbird highlights how intelligence agencies shaped public discourse. Information operations are now critical aspects of military strategy, controlling narratives, and greatly influence public opinion and political decision. The legacy of this operation emphasizes the link between media intelligence and military strategy. Understanding these tactics is essential to recognizing modern military and counterintelligence practices, or just programming you to think.
And this is extremely dangerous.
I'm sure everyone has seen
extremely
this.
dangerous to our democracy.
And this
This is
honestly
extremely
the
dangerous to our
spark
democracy.
of
This
what
is extremely dangerous
allowed
to our
me
democracy.
to
This is
create
extremely
a video
dangerous to our
like this,
democracy.
just to
This is
showcase
extremely
what I was
dangerous
talking
to our
about.
democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our 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 democracy.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Y'all seeing this?
Really fishy story.
The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019.
The FBI is now investigating whether those alleged Hunter Biden emails are actually connected to a larger foreign intelligence operation.
They may be related to a foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence operation.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Part of a Russian disinformation effort.
Described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks.
All the hallmarks, rather.
All the hallmarks of a Russian
disinformation.
Russian disinformation
campaign.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
Now, I don't want to freak out, but at this point, I remember in 2016, 2017, during Donald Trump's first term of office, everyone's pushing this whole Russia, like Donald Trump is a Russian asset or some kind of a Russian agent. It was heavily pushed by Hillary Clinton, and a lot of the people that you see on based off the media, essentially this came along in line with the infamous Steele dossier. The whole Steele dossier was comprised of a series of memos compiled into a book by a man named Christopher Steele. Now, Christopher Steele is a former MI6 agent. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but Essentially, it was just a well-developed conspiracy and coordination between Donald Trump's campaign and the Russian government. The memo also claimed that Russia held compromising evidence and information on Donald Trump, including allegations of a video involving a prostitute doing nefarious things. That's not even the craziest part. It was produced as a political opposition research effort aimed at gathering information on Donald Trump, and it was funded by none other than Hillary Clinton and her campaign, as well as the Democratic Party, through their law firm Perkins Coie, who contracted Fusion GPS, which then subcontracted Christopher Steele, in turn hired by Igor Danchenko to gather information from his network. Igor Danchenko was later indicted in 2021 for allegedly lying to the FBI, but a source and a London judge found that Steele's firm had not taken any reasonable steps to verify the information, and despite being largely discredited, the dossier played a role in amplifying the atmosphere of suspicion surrounding Trump and Russia. So without any evidence, parts of the dossier were given to the FBI as well as reporters. In fact, BuzzFeed published 35 pages back in January of 2017. The FBI used some of the claims without any independent verification. In the application to the wiretap of former Donald Trump's campaign advisor, Carter Page, even the Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz, he criticized the FBI back in 2019 for the flaws of these wiretap applications. The craziest part is that John Durham's investigation that focused on the origins of the FBI investigations into Donald Trump's ties into Russia. While the investigation didn't uncover any evidence of collusion between Donald Trump and Russia, according to the Durham report, it revealed that the FBI offered money to Christopher Steele, the former British spy who authored the infamous Trump-Russia dossier, for any information corroborating his claims. But according to the FBI supervisory analyst Brian Auten's testimony during the related trial, the FBI offered Steele up to $1 million for any evidence. However, Steele never received any money because he could not provide any corroborating evidence for allegations in his dossier. So basically, he wrote a whole bunch of propaganda with no evidence. And Donald Trump was right. They did spy on his campaign.
To the dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
Up next, another Oval Office meltdown, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office.
To be with you, I'm Katie Tur. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today.
Today, Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader.
Zelensky territory, where essentially he was a bit ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Felt like an ambush in there, kind of like the President Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office.
This was an ambush. It was orchestrated.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush.
What started as, to some degree, an ambush.
Well, Katie, I mean, it was an ambush.
Ambush.
Ambushed.
Ambush. An ambush.
Ambushing.
Ambushed inside the Oval Office.
I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Are you guys noticing it yet? I mean, am I the only one that sees this? I feel like every time something happens in the news, whether it's Donald Trump, or the economy, or wars, or immigration, it's like we're being told how to feel, what to think. Remember COVID came out, and CNN would not stop with the death numbers? It was almost every single day. Remember how that made you feel? Being at home, watching this?
ASAP is off to, you might say, a bumpy start. Let's go through some of the numbers. And again, the numbers at the moment are encouraging, from a horrible place, but moving in the right direction. You see 39 states in green. 39 states reporting fewer new COVID infections now compared to a week ago. That's the direction you want to be heading. 8 states holding steady, only 3, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Alaska, reporting more new infections now compared to a week ago. If you look up here are the 2 graphs that matter. You see how much this is down. Might be hard to see all the numbers, but 64,938 new COVID infections reported on yesterday. That's the lowest number since back in October. You see some days up around 300,000. Moving down below 100,000, if it can stay there. Sometimes the weekends are low and it pops back up, but you see the trend line heading down. That's where you want to keep it. Cases are down, hospitalizations as well. 67,000 Americans in the hospital on Sunday. Remember, the peak was about twice that. It was a little over 100.
Remember when Biden's mental decline was starting to become noticeable around 2019? They said, no, that's not true. Then after every single year, it just got progressively worse and worse. And the more that people pointed it out, the more they said it wasn't real. Or how about how many times he just kept falling? Anytime he would forget people's names, forget words, trip over his own sentences, people said that those are cheap fakes. What we were witnessing was not real.
You think of Hunter Biden, and there's certainly a lot of people in this town, Democrats and Republicans, that do not think a lot of him. There is a certain kind of cruelty to the campaign against him. Where is Hunter? Where is Hunter? Where is Hunter? The right wing is going crazy with all sorts of allegations about Biden and his family, too disgusting to even repeat here. I mean, some of the ones I've seen from the president's son and some of the president's supporters are just wildly unhinged. I think that you came here and leveled a bunch of accusations and allegations about Hunter Biden.
I didn't level. I just said the facts.
When he was on the stage, the decision he made in the moment was an unsubtle allusion to Alzheimer's or ageism.
Yeah.
Now, if he thinks that's winning, good luck. And if he thinks that the notion that, again, people have talked about Joe Biden's weaknesses as a candidate. If you actually think he's weak, then he'll fall on his own sort of time.
That was in 2019.
This is Joe Biden out there on a vigorous bike ride. Not wearing a helmet, but definitely wearing a mask, by the way. Fox's narrative and talk radio's narrative for months has been that Joe Biden is falling apart. You just heard Ben Shapiro say it, falling apart. And there he is riding a bike, out for a bike ride.
Brian Stelter is the biggest clown on CNN. Not only that, he's a massive propagandist.
Cannot downplay the comfort that some of us feel in the country, that government is actually working, or at least trying to work, that competence is actually at the helm.
Biden does have word-finding difficulties. He does. I mean, anytime you hear him in a speech, he does stumble. And I don't know if that's his stutter or if that's the prompter, but he does. And as you know, his critics seize on that.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
It's like it's so in your face. It's so blatant. It's like some kind of a panic. Maybe cope? Morning Joe, just go ahead and kiss the ring already.
several events since the CNN debate, President Biden has appeared vigorous. He has had a really busy, jam-packed schedule where you haven't seen what we all saw on the debate stage.
President Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Why does White House staff treat him like a baby?
No one treats the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, like a baby.
So there's this vote that says
that's ridiculous.
When staff walk back,
claim.
How is President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you, sir.
One of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president, I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally out.
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak.
The reporter's Peter Ducey. He's talking about Robert Hur's report. In the report, Special Counsel Robert Hur investigated President Biden on how he handled classified documents after his vice presidency. And he said that he's a well-meaning elderly man with poor memory. Yet somehow he's able to run the country. Now, if you guys are still not convinced, I would like you guys to watch this short clip by Full Measures. You should watch their YouTube channel. It's called Full Measures with Cheryl Atkinson. She does a great breakdown during the years of Trump's first presidency, and you kind of get an eye-opening of how the news outlets and media have been non-stop lying to you. And it goes to show that Donald Trump was right. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and a lot of left-wing media outlets are all fake news. Watch this.
NBC incorrectly reported that Trump stayed home at Christmas time, the first U.S. president since 2002 to skip visiting the troops. The news went global. But it wasn't true. The media had jumped the gun. Trump and First Lady Melania left the White House Christmas Day to visit U.S. soldiers in Iraq. On Thanksgiving, Newsweek made a similar error, falsely reporting that Trump was spending the holiday golfing at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. But the reporter had fabricated the golf story. Trump flew to Afghanistan on Thanksgiving to again be with the troops, making Trump the only president in U.S. history to visit troops in a combat zone both on Thanksgiving and so close to Christmas, though the press never reported that.
I remember this very well. A lot of friends and family who are liberals said the exact same thing. Like, why isn't Trump acknowledging or visiting the troops during Thanksgiving, when in fact he did? The problem is that whenever this stuff happens, and then the media releases it so-called errors, it's really hard to go back and convince them otherwise when they've already watched what they saw. And so now everyone's just saying, well, Donald Trump, at least he can spend Thanksgiving golfing. Like, this is unreal.
Years into the Biden presidency, it's clear Trump was treated with unique unfairness by error-riddled reports in the media, always cutting in a negative direction. There's been no similar trend under Biden. But first, a reminder of just a few of the worst media mistakes about Trump. CNN claimed Nancy Sinatra was not happy her father's song was played at Trump's inauguration. But Nancy Sinatra responded, "That's not true. I never said that. Why do you lie, CNN?"
Again, these are the same perpetrators. You've heard of it. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, they all lie. Every single left-wing media establishment lies. Why do you think Donald Trump has said that you people are fake news? The problem is that whenever these big companies or media outlets, so-called news, they all cover each other's stories. And this creates a large echo chamber for people to think that Donald Trump is a complete a-hole.
Time falsely claimed Trump removed the bust statue of Martin Luther King from the Oval Office. TMZ reported Trump changed Black History Month to African American History Month, but Presidents Obama, Bush, and Clinton had all called it African American History Month.
Oh boy, gotta throw in that race card, right? Because we gotta show the world, we gotta show United States that Donald Trump is a big racist bigot.
BBC, The Guardian, and others reported that Trump wasn't bothering to listen to a speech by Italy's prime minister since he wasn't wearing translation headphones. Turns out he was wearing a translation earpiece. Newsweek and others reported Poland's first lady refused to shake Trump's hand, but later had to admit she did.
It's like they're just making shit up at this point.
CNN edited Trump's remarks to make it seem as though he didn't realize Japan builds cars in the U.S., but the full statement made clear that he does.
You've been creating jobs for our country for a long, long time. Several Japanese automobile industry firms have been really doing a job.
CNN also edited a video to make it seem like Trump impatiently dumped fish food in the water at Japan's palace. But he'd followed the lead of Japan's prime minister.
Surprise, surprise, CNN back at it again. People forget that Shinzo Abe, who was the prime minister of Japan, rest in peace, and Donald Trump were really good friends.
Newsweek claimed Ivanka Trump plagiarized one of her own speeches, which is impossible since plagiarizing is stealing someone else's work. The UK Telegraph apologized for at least 8 mistakes in an article criticizing Melania Trump.
8 mistakes. Yeah, okay.
The New York Times, AP, CNN, and others excerpted a Trump comment as if he'd called all illegal immigrants animals.
These aren't people. These are animals. And
later corrections noted he'd been referring to members of the murderous MS-13 criminal gang.
It's like we don't want to hurt the gang's feelings, right, guys?
The New York Times Magazine and CNN shared a story showing children illegally brought into the U.S. supposedly in cages, but the article and photos were actually from the Obama administration. Agence France-Presse mistakenly reported that more than 100,000 children brought in by illegal immigrants were being held in detention. That was actually the total number in 2015 under Obama.
Are you starting to get it? Like, where was the hysteria during Obama?
Time and others showed a crying Honduran child to illustrate Trump separating illegal immigrant parents from children, but the child hadn't been separated from her parents in the U.S. MSNBC falsely claimed Trump banned the Red Cross from visiting the immigrant children. The Red Cross said that wasn't true. MSNBC also falsely claimed that Trump had talked about exterminating Latinos, but later corrected that and apologized.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, we'll correct that. There's a bunch of mistakes and errors. You know, I'm really starting to think that these people need to be held accountable, but instead, these people are just propagandizing against the United States public.
NBC News misidentified the focus of Trump's praise in a speech as Confederate General Robert E. Lee. Actually, Trump was talking about Union General Ulysses S. Grant.
And his name was Grant, General Grant.
The Washington Post and others falsely reported that Trump supporting pro-life Catholic high school students were the aggressors in a confrontation in Washington, D.C.
It's like they're getting desperate. They're just throwing anything at the wall, anything, and just hoping that it sticks. And what's funny is that people gobble this up. They literally just stuff their face with this.
Several news outlets featured an empty podium at Trump's 4th of July celebration in 2019 and said he didn't draw crowds, but the photo was taken before the event. The actual crowd was huge. The New York Times and others implied Trump hadn't paid income taxes for 18 years, but the record shows he'd paid a higher rate than Democrats Bernie Sanders and President Obama.
I remember Donald Trump during the last election was literally saying, I prepaid.
Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal reported special counsel Robert Mueller had subpoenaed Trump's bank records. That wasn't true. Politico falsely reported that Trump owed the Bank of China tens of millions of dollars in a loan coming due as he dealt with China on coronavirus. Not true. MSNBC falsely reported that Trump had loans with Russian co-signers. Slate.com falsely claimed a Russian bank server had been illicitly communicating with Trump Tower.
First, it started off with China, then with Russia. You got to understand, from a person outside of politics during this time, that's all I would hear nonstop was Donald Trump colluding with Russia. Russia, 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 Russia.
And the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, and many others falsely reported that the Hunter Biden laptop scandal story was unsubstantiated or Russian disinformation. The New York Times reported that Trump seized on hydroxychloroquine as a miracle cure. Trump never said that.
And it may work and it may not work. But if it doesn't work, it's nothing lost by doing it. Nothing.
It's like pick and choose your battles.
CNN and others criticized Trump for tweeting that Alabama would likely be affected by Hurricane Dorian, but official advisories had put Alabama in a projected impacted area. Vox.com tweeted that Trump suggested he'd been a 9/11 first responder. He'd said the opposite.
And I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself a first responder.
I mean, you think the guy that does a lot of business in New York and lives in New York might just be in New York?
Multiple media falsely claimed Trump was golfing during a U.S. raid that captured the head of ISIS in Syria, and that a White House photo of Trump had been staged. But Trump was at the White House.
General Mark Milley is such a disgrace.
ABC aired video showing what it called a slaughter against Kurds by Turkey after Trump withdrew U.S. troops, but the video was file tape of a training show in the U.S.
This is just laughable. Like, who are these journalists? Do they just see something and they're just like, oh yeah, this is what's happening in Syria? Like, man, these people are not journalists at all.
And USA Today connected the eagle on a Trump campaign t-shirt with a Nazi eagle, later admitting the eagle is a longtime U.S. symbol, too.
Oh my gosh. So we just went through all of that. And that was just his first term. And it's like, gosh, I'm so curious of what's gonna come next. This second term. I just wanted to show people that we just went from oops, we're making mistakes to Donald Trump is golfing all the time under the taxpayer dollar, not visiting the troops, to now, you know, oh, Donald Trump is a racist, to oh, they're just full on Nazis now. You gotta understand, what worries me is these so-called journalists that work for MSNBC, CNN, ABC, you name it. If these people are reporting the wrong story, or inadvertently misinformed, or purposely trying to hurt Donald Trump administration or any kind of administration, couldn't that possibly potentially cause international tension, or maybe even worse, international conflict? If we're not careful, people in other countries could possibly take our reporting as accurate. And I think this is something we need to be aware of and we need to be cautious of. This is why I believe there's a mass hysteria against Donald Trump. During his first term, a little bit towards the end, I always heard of, Trump derangement syndrome. And I always thought that was a right-wing jab or kind of a poke to the left-wing liberals. But the more and more that I uncover this, the more and more I'm starting to see that this is the problem with media. A lot of it's on the left, and I think that this is what causes TDS. I think people have been so bought into the idea that Donald Trump is a racist, fascist, Hitlerian, authoritarian, whatever, you name it, whatever, misogynistic, whatever. And people see this and think, oh my gosh, how are people voting for this? And I think the reason why people are voting for this is because people can see the difference of how one story is being reported versus another. And the problem is, like I said, is when all these news outlets cover each other's stories, it really has a hard time of just going back and telling the public who have already seen that, saying, oh, hey, sorry guys, yeah, we made a mistake. It's like by that point, it's already too late. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you for watching. I wanted to make this video to kind of show the propaganda and the hypocrisy of what we're watching in today's political climate. And I just wanted to express how these things that pop up can make you feel a certain way or even think a certain way. So before you get riled up, just wait and do a little bit of research and think for yourself. I'll see you in chaos. Like and subscribe.